Some time ago, I started a DCS World series called Flashpoint. It was my desire to create a fictional conflict in which I would fly missions as pilots on both sides of the conflict. Each new mission will be based on the outcome of the previous missions and the circumstances that result depending on the outcome of those missions. So let's say, for example, I go out and fly a close air support mission in an Su-25, and over the course of that mission I get shot down and have to eject. Assuming I survive and parachute safely to the ground, the next mission could be me taking on the role of an Mi-8 pilot whose mission is to go out, locate, and rescue, well, me. I have done considerable research into the militaries and equipment used by the different sides. As an example, I have a list of how much of each piece of equipment each side has that will be reflected in the series. Honestly, this aspect probably won't come into play very much with the American and Russian equipment due to their vast arsenals, but I will be paying close attention to it when it comes to a country like Georgia, whose stockpiles of various equipment are limited. The Georgia military has a total of 220 T-72 tanks, at least based on the figures I was able to find. If in a mission 10 of those tanks are lost, then the total will come down to 210. If eventually all are lost, then there won't be any more left to field. However, other factors will also come into play, such as other nations providing them with new equipment, but that new equipment still has to get to Georgia somehow. If the US gives them 12 tanks, then the most likely means of delivery is via transport via sea. So it's possible that because of that, one mission could be based on me trying to sink those transports to prevent the delivery of those new armaments. Something else that would come into play as a result of lost equipment is one side or the other having to employ older model aircraft like the MiG-21 or MiG-25 or something, possibly leading to interesting dynamics of having to fly aircraft that are considerably out of date against a superior foe, forcing myself or the AI to showcase their ability to be cunning. Well, I'm not holding my breath in regards to the AI, but me anyways. All that said, as far as proper military procedure when it comes to the various missions involved in air combat and support, and how or how not they would approach certain things is something that I'm not overly familiar with. So if you ever see something in one of these missions and think, well, that's just not how they would do it, feel free to let me know in the comments and I can take that into account for future videos. My aim is to make these scenarios as plausible as possible in regards to the military engagements themselves and the geopolitics behind the conflict in relation to the world stage as it exists in 2017 and the near future, with a sort of Tom Clancy-esque way of developing the story. So now let's go over the big picture of this whole scenario, and to do so requires a little bit of geopolitical context. In Georgia, the country, not the state, there are a number of regions that border Russia that have independence movements. One of those regions is South Ossetia, located in northern Georgia. Perfect scenario since the Black Sea map is based on that region. In my scenario, the people in that region have stepped up their fight for independence from Georgia through guerrilla tactics, and Georgian troops have moved into the region to combat them. In response, the Russian military has moved to aid them in driving Georgian troops out of the region. So far, they have managed to gain a foothold on the Georgian side of the only mountain pass between Russia and South Ossetia. By the way, I'm not trying to make any statements about the US or Russia in this scenario by insinuating one side is wrong and the other is right, or something along those lines. That said, I may not be able to help making, let's say, an observation from time to time. But for the overall scenario itself, I'm not trying to say that Russia is overly militarily aggressive or that the US meddles in the affairs of other countries too much, even if I actually think one or the other or both is true. But that's not what this channel is about. I'll leave that for the potential CzarPeppers political pundit channel. But back to the topic at hand. So far, the United States has not become involved in the conflict, or at least not directly. They have taken a passive role, including providing the Georgians with technical support and employing covert operations. At this time in the conflict, they have stationed some forces in southern Georgia, mainly as a deterrent, and a naval task force is preparing to leave Istanbul into the Black Sea in order to escort much-needed supplies to Georgia. The exact contents of this convoy are still unknown to the Russians. At this moment, I will be flying for Russia, since Russian aircraft are the one I'm most familiar with in the game so far. And that I've always had a love for Russian aircraft, or Russian things in general, as I'm sure you can tell from the visual style of my channel. But later on, I plan on flying NATO aircraft as well, so you can see both perspectives in the upcoming conflict, or continuing conflict, as I've already done in the first episode of this series. I'm hoping to also find someone to control ground forces in these missions, to make them more interesting and more dynamic. That way I have someone on the ground who can relay recon information to me and pinpoint important targets for me to take out from the air with smoke or other means. Then they can move in at the most advantageous time, rather than just having a bunch of AI fighting it out with not really much thought going into it. I might have Dapper Dan take on that role, but if you're interested, let me know, because it is by no means certain, since he's a bit picky when it comes to the kinds of games he wants to play. I know, someone who doesn't want to spend hours trying to remember key mapping, reading 200 plus page flight manuals for each individual aircraft while taking notes and making heavy use of a highlighter. Isn't that what gaming is all about? At the moment, I will be mainly flying the Su-25T, because it is an aircraft. It's the aircraft I'm most familiar with at the moment. But I've also been reading up and practicing with the Su-27 for more air-to-air combat, and I'm sure I'll be flying it once I figure out the damn sensors and different ways to engage targets. Time to get the notepad and highlighter again. In the first mission I did, Russian forces managed to take a strategic location from Georgian forces in the northern portion of South Ossetia. However, Russian armor took heavy losses, and the majority of the Georgian armored forces have managed to fall back to a position in South Ossetia. That is where the next mission, Operation Iskra, will take place. I'm always looking for people who would like to be my wingman, so let me know if you'd like to go up with me on one of these missions or against me, or if you want to do something that doesn't require days of reading flight manuals. You could take control of the ground forces, something that is relatively straightforward compared to flying in DCS world. I also plan on creating a new series that will document my learning different things in DCS, mainly because I have a feeling it will provide some potentially comedic moments. So look out for that too. And so until the next mission briefing, fly dangerously. Peppers out.